I'm really glad that the hoard has come here to be on display and for it to engage a whole new group of people. So I'm Martin Goldberg. I am the early medieval and Viking curator at National Museum Scotland, which is based in Edinburgh. I'm an expert in Viking Age material culture, but I have never seen anything quite like this. The hoard was discovered just over 10 years ago by a group of metal detectorists, and as soon as they got their discovery, they did the right thing. They contacted the legal authorities, the Treasure Trove unit, and there was a programme of fieldwork afterwards. And so one of the real values of this is that we can say where this hoard was buried. And so that in itself is quite unusual. We often don't get the archaeological context of where these things were buried. But this is the largest single collection of gold from Viking Age Britain and Ireland. So it's 5 kilograms of silver, unusual textile preservation, more gold than we've seen anywhere else, objects that don't seem to have any modern intrinsic value, but they are valued because they are part of this collection and they're kept with this amazing group of material.
One of the remarkable things about the hoard is that it was so carefully preserved. The objects were located within their packaging as they would have been packed 1,000 years ago.
So the hoard is made up of pieces of sort of ingots that are literally just lumps of metal that were used as a kind of currency, all the way through to the most extraordinary, exquisite, elite kinds of techniques that existed in the period. So there are some incredibly high status things in this collection. This hoard is famous amongst scholars. It's not just sort of a bunch of silver that was brought out of the ground. It is alongside sort of Sutton Hoo, the Staffordshire Hoard and the Galloway Hoard are probably the kind of the three most famous deposits from the early medieval period. This is incredibly exciting and incredibly well known amongst the research community because of that potential for new research and new insights.
It can do multiple things for us because it can capture the spirit of the age. You know, the Viking Age is this sort of much storied age where we think of raiding and trading and burning monasteries and things like that. But there's so much more. There's things that we just never expected to discover and learn about.
Every little slither of silver and gold within the Galloway Hoard is like this lightning bolt that illuminates things and allows you to glimpse some detail of this period. And it has significantly reframed the way we think about the Viking Age. They're not bloodthirsty savages riding dragons. You know? These are a soulful and sentimental people who loved fine craftsmanship and wanted to preserve it, to pass it down to future generations.
70% of the hoard is silver bullion, and it's the type of bullion that we might expect to find in a Viking hoard. But it has another strange collection of objects, and often the materials are unusual, the craftsmanship is unusual, and particularly the gold. Each item of gold is distinct and unique in some way, whereas the silver, it can almost be repetitive. It was produced as gifts by war leaders to give to their followers. The gold is usually distinctive. You can almost imagine that it would have been associated with particular people. They're so individual and unique, these objects. And a lot of those objects seem to be like mementos or heirlooms. It's their age that's giving them value. And so they would have had stories for people in the past that buried them. Stories that we're only catching a glimpse of. Stories that are to do with unexpected people. So the Viking Age has a kind of real masculine element to it, but we've got lots of female objects here, you know, so we're picking up stories of other people. It's not just all raiding and the stereotype of the Viking Age. There are new stories to tell, and that's really powerful and exciting.
The kinds of processes that people need to preserve this are really extraordinary, and new processes are being developed all the time. And in fact, when a hoard like this is found, it always generates new conservation techniques because you're confronted with a new situation with new problems.
Because really nothing lasts forever. That's actually the truth of the matter. Nothing lasts forever. So museums enter into this exercise of trying to preserve things and keep things for as long as possible. But at some point you also have to think about, well, we don't just want to bury it in a hole and wait for it to turn to dust. We've got to find ways to use it and prolong the enjoyment that that material might have to people in the present.
And there are so many people who care, you know, and want to look after this stuff. So they think through every permutation. They plan ridiculously they plan out every scenario. But bringing it here is not too much. Bringing it here has worked, and we're really glad that it's here.
Sending a collection to the other side of the world is always a difficult process. To bring a collection like this across the world is always a huge deal. And as you can see, there are items in the collection that they haven't sent. And some of those are because they are considered too delicate to survive.
I became familiar with the contents of the Galloway Hoard largely through reproduction, through lovely photographs and video footage and even X-ray scans. But when the material was finally unpacked into the space and placed into the cabinets, it brought with it a whole new aura of fascination, really, because you're starting to see it at a scale that allows you to imagine the people who were making this material and wearing this material. You can see the stamp marks of the maker beating out these strips of silver and patterning them. You can see the tiny errors, but when you actually see the objects, suddenly you're starting to see the hand of humanity. But then by the end of the show, you've looked at all of this material that's been carefully preserved by people that we have a very fuzzy picture of, and you're wondering why they buried it in the ground. But more to the point, perhaps, why did they never come back to collect it? Every one of us can relate to the idea of wanting to keep things that are precious to us hidden, trying to secure it for the future. Passing on heritage like that is something that I think most people can relate to in some way. But there's still this question of why did they never come back?
This treasure that is on display at the moment in the South Australia Museum can conjure up to almost anybody that visits. It can conjure up a particular story. The really interesting thing about the material in this hoard is it can allow you to tell different stories. So I have my theories. You will form your own theories when you visit. We wouldn't be halfway around the world if the material didn't justify it. There's so much to see and there's so much to learn. And I just hope that everybody gets to appreciate the joy, the discovery, the excitement, because that's what it means to me.
It's effectively a world premiere. It will never be seen in this form again. And so if you're even vaguely interested in the Viking Age, then you want to come along and buy the t-shirt. You know, it's that kind of event.
Having this collection in Adelaide is just the most extraordinary opportunity. We are the first group of people outside Scotland to have a chance to come and see this in our own city. When I was a little kid, I got to see a big international exhibition and it changed my life. And there will be kids who see this exhibition and it will change their lives too. I don't think there's any question.